Welcome back for more puzzles and riddles. First I want to start off with a quick, kind of a status update, but first of all I do want to actually express some appreciation for, I've gotten a couple messages and some comments and subscribers, and I haven't shared these videos with anyone, so I assume it's, in part due to the popularity of the MIT Mystery Hunt, but I thank you everybody who's talked to me and encouraged me to keep, working on these puzzles. They're, they're pretty difficult to from the get-go. So hopefully we can continue these for a long while into the year. And actually on that note, I wanted to give a status update as to where I am solving. So on the left here I have the world map for the Grand Castle, which is the first area revealed of Penny Park. So I've released videos on the Ferris wheel and the boats on the southwest. Today I'm going to do probably I'm aiming for half of Penny Park Guide. There's 6 parts. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but I'm sure it's fine. But there's roughly 6 parts of the Penny Park Guide, and I'm going to do half of them today. I have also solved the Scottish display, and yesterday I solved the trebuchet. That one was really fun, really tough, but very fun. Snow Job really is a stumper. I have been really working hard on that for 2 or 3 days, and I have not made what I assume is the biggest click to be had, but I did actually go and approach the meta, as us puzzle solvers are wont to do. I was able to solve the castle puzzle, and from that I actually worked backwards, and I have the answer for Snow Job, but I haven't looked at the solution because I do still want to solve it. So that's something that I'll be continuing to try. If you can catch me on Twitch at that's Dr. Exor as well. Come out and help me. Maybe try and give me some kind of tactful hint. Don't spoil it, but I could definitely use some help, because man, I've tried a lot of things. But more on that later. So what we're gonna do is get right into the what is it? What did I say? It was the Penny Park Guide. So I'll glance at this page. We're not really going to see it much, but essentially all it does is give you a link to the brochure and tell you how to fold it, print it out, and things of that nature. So I won't need that. I'm actually going to move to a Google Sheet that I'm going to... Whoa! That's a spoiler. It's fine. I needed to prep some stuff because this is a very lengthy puzzle with a lot of graphical elements, as you'll see very soon. And so this was another one where it would have been really difficult to solve like live, just because like I wouldn't have. It took me a long time to think of like how I was gonna sit down and kind of display all of this. So so for one of the parts coming up, I have that as a prep work. So but before we get there, let me show you around this guide. So on the right here in GIMP, I've uploaded. There's 2 pages. There's a front and a back. Very colorful, very fun to look at. I absolutely love. I'm so impressed by whoever put this together. It's perfect. It's just what you'd expect at an amusement park. As a Disney guy, I'm all about this. So there's a lot of stuff, right? So this on the right here, this is like the front page where it says how to, like you can imagine, again, there are these lines that apparently weren't on the originals. Like you were handed physical professional copies of these on campus. I would love to have one of those, but this is the front, and then you Z-fold it, and so like this on the left here, these kind of become the like what you might flip open to be the inside as a book, and then this is actually the back page, and then of course since it's a Z-fold, you kind of have this other outside area over here. So we'll get back to the front because the front is going to guide us through the whole puzzle. But I will just glance over everything. We've got all sorts of ads and little fun, like when you were a kid and went to the restaurant and the kids menu had word searches and tic-tac-toe grids on it and stuff like that. That's what we've got here. There's an ad for the Penny Pub. There's some celebrities that love Penny Park. There's a little... this looks puzzly, right? But it's a castle region map. We've got something about pets and a poem and a word search. We've got, if I flip to the back here, we've got some mascots of the castle, king and queen. We have another ad, right? Connect with gigantic savings. And then we have, what else? Trivia, some... the MIT Puzzle Club and Team Left Out. Thank you for visiting the award-winning Penny Park, and some other, op-eds, some cutout coins, so many things here going on. But fortunately, they got right to the point, and they gave us this wonderful how to use this guide section right on the front page. And this is where your eyes should trend. If you have not solved this puzzle, go try it. Pennypark.fun. It's in the Grand Castle, and it's called the Penny Park Guide. This whole thing is really fun. some parts of it are tough, so don't feel bad if you get stuck, but because there's a lot you can work on at once. Each of these bullets that your eyes should be drawn to this kind of how-to, and each of these bullet points is a separate mini puzzle that you have to solve before you can get to the end. So if you get stuck on one, you can just jump to another and look at different parts of this massive guide. And it's really a lot of fun for that reason. Like I think I love having multiple things to work on because you can always like get stuck and then go to something else and think of something and come back. So but I will go in order for the sake of this video. I will go in order. I don't actually. I think maybe towards the end on the in the next video when I finish this puzzle up, I can try to think of the order in which I solved them, but I did not solve them in order. But right from the top, here's what happens. We read the first blurb and it says, "How well do you know Penny Park? The attraction names were inspired by the accomplishments of some of our celeb visitors. Why not take some pennies from our cutout section?" And so there are three clues here. First one is, how well do you know Penny Park? And if you stared at this guide long enough, right? Obviously, if you're solving this, you'll be looking at the guide quite a bit for clues, and this will be obvious to you. How well do you know Penny Park? It's just a whole section here. So we're gonna start there, and then it says the attraction names were inspired by our celeb visitors, right? And so actually that's on the same page. Up in this corner, we have celeb visitors I pointed to earlier, right? So that's probably going to help us out. And then it says donate some cutout coins in their honor, and we've got cutout coins right above the how well do you know Penny Park section. So those are the three elements of this brochure that we're going to be using for the beginning. And in that order is probably best to process, but they all work together. You'll see soon enough. So how well do you know Penny Park? And it says, can you identify these attractions from their descriptions, right? And there's some fill in the blank going on. So that's what I'm gonna do in this Google sheet on the left first. Is we're gonna fill in these blanks, and I'll actually mock. I know all the other answers now in my head, but I will mock my process because I think that'll help people that haven't done this kind of thing before. And first and foremost, you have to start guessing, right? You can't worry about like, is my answer correct? You just have to go with your gut and start putting things down on paper and let the patterns come to you later and fix mistakes as you go. So, what attraction allows visitors to take control of a remotely operated Roman commander? What features a graveyard monument for small units of length? What is it, an area of land designated to be in the middle of the park? So as you go through these, there's 8 clues here. As you go through these, you should pick up on a small pattern, which is first of all that all of the answers have 2 words. There's a space in every enumeration here. There's a space. Everything is 2 words, and not only that, but the clues seem oddly divided into 2 descriptions, right? So we have like the first one, remotely operated is one half, and then remote Roman commander is the other half, because like those 2 things don't go together at all. Graveyard monument is one half, and small units of length is the other half, right? And so on. It goes forward, and so you always have kind of 2 things in the description and 2 words in your answer, and so that at least gave me a starting point for guessing, right? And so I thought something like, oh, what's remotely operated? A robot. And a Roman commander is a centurion. So I put that down, and that fits. Of course, I was trying to fit the blanks as well. So the next one, graveyard monument for small units of length. Something that fits is tombstone, and I think I actually went with millimeters. An area of land, I thought maybe plot, and then it said designated to be in the middle of a park, and I immediately thought of New York's Central Park, and at this point what actually helped me think of Central was because I started noticing the pattern, and I jumped forward a little bit and saw, focal point, 100 years ago, right? That's a century. The more specific clues come towards the end. Number 6 and 7 are very specific, and Google can help you with those. So you look up who's the director of A Fistful of Dollars, right? We can go to I've got a Google over here as well. I can say, I see I've already Googled it, right? Sergio Leone. So Leone is the first word, so that's great. I'll put him on, what is that, number 6. And then similarly, the nearest star system, I Googled simply nearest star system, and then you'll get actually a nearest, see there you go, Proxima Centauri, and both of these fit the blank. But this one, what really caught my eye, right? When I put it in, I said, okay, there's clearly a pattern here with the beginnings of each of these, right? And because millimeters is not unique, right? For a small unit of measurement, I can make that centimeters just as well. And all the other ones kind of lend themselves to beginning with cent. If you look up 100 points in cricket, that's easy. That's a century. That's a very easy Google to make. So that's bone century, and politically moderate, right, is something else. And so the jump you have to make after you've made a couple guesses for how to fill in these blanks is, first of all, I think it's easiest to notice they all start with cent. The second words start with cent. But secondly, if you have some good peripheral vision, right? If you're looking towards this cutout coin collection that we'll be using quite soon, it was hinted at in the guide, all the coins say 1 cent on them. And why does that make sense? Because it's a guide about the penny park, right? This whole guide is about pennies. So 1 cent makes a lot of sense. And I think this was the first one that, or actually, sorry, again, the director is very specific, and we have 1 cent right in the middle of this clue, and bone century right in the middle there. Tombstone centimeters is almost correct. I'll actually come back to that one as well. That's got a small error here. But you don't have to resolve it just yet. So it turns out all of these these attraction names all have 1 cent right in the middle, and it's surrounding the space, right? You never have to, there's always a space in between the word 1 and cent. So robot should become drone. Plot is pretty tricky. It was actually, I think it's zone is what I had to come up with to make that work. So we had a ringing Android communication device is a phone, of course, and a focal point. This was a really tricky one because it's such a long word, but it ends up being phone centerpiece. The next one is hushed. This is absolutely the hardest one. Hushed or muted sound. Maybe I just don't have a good word bank in my brain for this, but hushed or muted sound ends up being undertone, and 100 years ago is, it's a weird one. It's you'd want to think like centennial, but it ends up being centenary, centenary with an A, something like that if we can spell. And on the question of a monarch's seat, right, so that's a throne, is politically moderate will be centrist. So all of these end up having 1 cent right in the middle. And that's the first step of the first mini puzzle, right? Great. How much work are we going to have to do here? You might be thinking, and it's a lot. So let's jump over to the celebrity section. So if we go over here, and you can start reading this, there's a lot of names and a lot of very specific and strange words. Like who was thrice humorist of the year, right? Who talks like that? And I don't know. There's just some really strange like words popping up, like fish and Malfurion and Alexon and all of these things. And so hopefully you figured out the pattern with 1 cent. And what should catch your eye very quickly is Druid Malfurion, because that is suspiciously close to Drone Centurion, the first in the list. That to me is the one that really jumps out of the page, among other things, because if you notice that, right, and you notice that and if you try to quantify it, how are Druid Malfurion and Drone Centurion related? Well, they actually have all of the letters in common except for the 1 cent, right? So if you replace 1 cent, we actually get, Druid Malfurion. Now we don't know why, right? There's not necessarily a reason why these particular letters were placed there. But that is the constraint that we have in this celebrity section, right? And the guide said, hey, the names of the attractions are inspired by. So that's kind of where we get a clue for what's going on here. And you can find versions of all of these attraction names in this celebrity paragraph. So for Tombstone centimeters, actually what you'll notice is millimeters, right? And right before it is headstand. So that's not Tombstone, that's actually headstone, is a synonym for, right, something else that appears in a cemetery. So headstone centimeters becomes headstand millimeters. Zone central becomes zinc mineral. Fish masterpiece right here. We've got undertook mercenary work. We have Statsky is the author of some legal thesauri. I thought that was really clever. I loved, like, who thought of this pair? That's wonderful. Bone century. Both Mercury, in fact. That's a little tricky because it doesn't have a very, like, bone is an easy word to trade out for something else. So both Mercury, and finally at the bottom I mentioned it, it's thrice humorist of the year, right? So all of these phrases are paired with the attraction names that contain 1 cent, right? And those letters have been replaced here. So we have a correspondence, right, between certain phrases in this paragraph and the numbers 1 to 8, right? Because if we go back to our section here, these were numbered 1 to 8. And now it's finally time to donate coins in the celebrity's honor from our cutout coin collection. And this is immediately backed up, right? These are numbered 1 to 8 as well. So we say, okay, we've got 8 coins, we've got 8 things going on here, and I will mention at this point you can very easily get distracted with kind of a lot of the other information in that celebrity paragraph, because like, so for example, I definitely took down all of the celebrities' names. Like, so this one's Ed Trotta, and the Statsky was Legal Thesaurus. So I started putting down the names, and it turns out the names are not actually helpful to you. They're just there to kind of space the paragraph and fill it up with. And I will really, I should say, they give reason to mentioning these words, right? Is being able to name anyone you want and then say words that correspond to them is very helpful for this kind of design. So so you don't need the people, you just actually need these phrases. And the conclusion, so here's actually, I should focus on the coins. So it's called a cutout coin collection. You should be driven to print the brochure, cut out the coins. And so what is the value of cutting these out? And well, what changes when you cut them out is, well, you have something on the back. So what I'm going to do, if I can figure out which page, I'm going to show this page. I'm going to show the back half, right? And I'm actually, here I've mirrored, I have a layer where I've mirrored this. So basically, if you were looking, you know, on this side of the brochure, right, and you held it up to the light, like you would obviously see this backwards, like you'd see the back half printed like this. So let me just overlay it. If I blur this out a little bit, and this should give you a good impression of what happens when you cut out these coins, right? So it's going to be a little hard to see, I admit. But I'll take it down in the document so it's more visible. But if I get a little circle selection tool right here, let me circle this coin. So there's oh goodness, where is it? I don't know if you can tell, there's a coin there, right, that I've outlined. And if I get rid of the coin, right, I end up circling the phrase sounds like. And so all of the coins do that. All of the coins, if you cut them out, if you were to cut them out. I didn't do this, I actually just kind of eyeballed it, so I held it up to the light. Because they're very small. That would have been very hard. And my scissoring skills are very subpar. So all of these coins end up having a phrase on the back of them with a certain number, right? So coin 1 is, if I can try and, it's very hard to see, but I'll make this a little blurrier. There we go. So number 1 is Corin Evans. We have the word evens. So I'll label this like this is attraction. This is celebrity note, I suppose. This is a back of coin. And I'm actually going to zoom out just a bit so we can get some more columns here. So we have 1 says evens. 2, I believe, is the sounds like that we have circled right now. It sounds like. 3 is reverse. 4 is, where is the 4? Shift 6 on the bottom right here. Shift 6. Sorry, I'm looking at this. I'm looking for the number 5, which is opposite of. That's a really tricky one. I liked how they crafted that into this poem with opportunity and sight of. That's very clever. 6 is have. 7 is add red. And 8 is mix up. So we get some little phrases on the back of each coin. You've cut them all out. And now let me get rid of this kind of opaque layer. Let me get rid of that. There we are. And we'll come back here to our paragraph. And they told us to cut out the coins and donate them in the celebrity's honor. And so I've mocked cutting out a coin. I have a coin here. And what I can do, right? So what really should strike you about the coins is we know what the numbers are. They're corresponding to each, like the 1 through 8 clues, and 1 cent is corresponding to the middle right of these attraction names. So that's helpful. But what is the target? What is the crosshair doing for us? And so it turns out if you overlap the words 1 cent with, you know, the phrase that they replace. So in this case, it's Druid Malfurion becomes drone centurion. You can even see it right as I put the coin down, and that crosshair ends up pointing to the word above, approximately above that space, right? That and if in doubt, a little bit to the right. So what you can do is kind of eyeball that. I'm not going to pull a coin out every 5 seconds here. But you can approximate. So Druid Malfurion has the word founder right above it. And I will also mention again, there's a little bit of ambiguity because you might think to yourself, well, I need a specific letter, right? It's pointing to the N in founder, right? It's not just the word. It's the N. But if you take down all those letters, they will not spell something of interest to you. It'll be gibberish, I think, and so you have to kind of think of something else. And furthermore, you have to remember that the coins have information on the back that you haven't used yet, and they seem to be transforms, right? So what can you take the opposite of? Well, if you have some word that you can take the opposite of, that would be nice. So it ends up being let's take the full word. So if you can just eyeball with me. I'll write them all down, but it'll be just above the space between the two words. So headstand millimeters, we have find. Oops, Freudian slip. Zinc mineral, we have actually, again, if it's ambiguous, go slightly to the right. So in this case, it's going to be DNA. And then the fish masterpiece, we have the word one up top. Undertook mercenary right in the center. It says in. Just before 1832. Legal thesauri has the number 4. Both Mercury comes underneath the word yellow. And thrice humorous is under the word ignores. So lastly, right, so now we have a new word. And to finish up this mini puzzle, right, all we have to do is combine the information we have in use. So we have some new words. These don't mean anything to us at face value, right? What is all that? That's gibberish. But we have the back of the coins, and each of them does seem to operate well on the corresponding word, right? If we've kept everything, you have to make sure you keep everything with 1 to 8, right? We have 8 numbered coins, and we have 8 numbered clues. So keeping all of that gives you these corresponding pairs of things, and a lot of them easily go together, right? Because half of 4 is going to be 2, and add red to yellow, and you get orange. So if I go from the beginning, evens is the tougher one, I think. Evens means take the even letters. So that's 2, 4, and 6. Those letters spell the word 1. What sounds like find? Well, this find, right? If I reverse the word, it becomes and. If you shift 6, go look up the Caesar cipher, but we're basically moving each of these letters forward in the alphabet 6 places, so an A would become a G. And this word becomes cut. The opposite of in is out. And if you go to an anagram solver, there's a word that is a mix-up of ignores. It is regions. I wasn't able to do that off the top of my head. That was a very hard anagram for me. Notably, I'll take this moment to mention nutramatic.org. It is my personal favorite anagram solver. There are many out there. But you can use angular brackets and put in your word, and it'll just anagram it for you. It has to be all lowercase, by the way. But here's regions, right? This is how I did it. I just typed in my anagram. And so now I have a little message. It reads 1, and I'm going to add some punctuation, which you might deduce on your own. 1, find and cut out 2, orange, regions. So there we are. That is the solution to subpuzzle number 1. If I go back to the beginning of the guide, right, we've got this bullet point, and we've now accounted for all of the things that it's talking about in that bullet point. So this is going to, right, so this is actually a step 1, right? There's going to be a bunch of steps we have to discover in order to finally finish the puzzle. So that may not be intuitive when you get here, but at the very least, I saw this message and kind of didn't know what to do with it. And had a hunch it was going to be, sort of a meta puzzle, but in general, like I didn't see any way to go forward with this. I didn't think it was cluing anything additional, so I just left it and I moved on. And we're going to go on to comment number 2. If you're bored to bits waiting in a long line, maybe use the time to try our fun word search puzzle. It's right here, close by. So we have a word search puzzle, and if you haven't solved this, I would try and pause the video and go do the word search. Right, word searches are easy. You can do this. Go do the word search, because the next part's not going to be so easy. But I'm not going to do the word search myself. I don't want to waste too much time on that. So without further ado, going down this list, we have a pasta, and that to me jumps out very instantly. It's penne pasta, right? It's vertically down the grid. It's very easy to see in the grid, even if you haven't even looked at the clues. Penne pasta kind of sticks out, and we have a couple others. and because immediately coming off of the first section, right, this was a theme about pennies. We had 1 cent in the clues, and then we cut out a bunch of pennies and threw them on a template. And so this whole brochure is going to be puzzles about pennies, and of course we have this penne pasta, which is suspiciously close to the word penny. A flower that is suspiciously close to penny is peony, reading vertically backwards. And we also have, what else was a very punny, going backwards here horizontally, is using humorous wordplay. So that is something that might help you identify some of these harder words. But so we have full of fronds is ferny. A commune in France, I think, is Penly at the bottom here. Actor Sean Penn, and family makes it plural, so it's pens. And all the answers end up being 5 letters, right? The African country is Kenya, a T is Pico, an English king is Henry. That's another easy one to start with, although it doesn't look like the word penny, not nearly as much as some other clues. And the fabric is I believe it's pan, right across here. So having found all those words, you can go ahead and color them in, and then you'll get stuck. You'll get really, really stuck. I think this might be one of the hardest steps. I think across all 5, across like the mini puzzles here, this might be one of the hardest steps because there's very little to clue what happens next. I will say first, the clues for the words in the search are not in alphabetical. Blah 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 blah. They are not in alphabetical order. And that should always strike you in these kinds of puzzles that if things are not in an intuitive order, it's usually relevant to keep them that way, right? These are given to us in some specific order that we need to preserve, just like we did in 1 to 8, right? 1 to 8 was, okay, they're giving us the order we need. And so this is the order we need to keep these clues in. So I'm going to do that. And so on top of that, right, something is odd about all these words. All these words resemble the word penny very closely. And one fair idea, one very good idea you might have immediately is, oh, well, let's write down all the letters that aren't in the word penny, right? So for penne is an E and pens is an S. And let's take all those letters and see if they spell something. And you would actually hit a dead end on that. That's not correct. But it's a good thought. And I want to mention it because I think it's important to kind of relay the ideas that I think other people will have that I had that might be confusing and acknowledge those. They're not as sort of red herrings in the process. So what we're going to do, though, is the key phrase says, if you're bored, to bits. And on top of that, there are 10 words hidden in this grid, and the number 10 jumped out to me. And we're actually going to use binary code. Binary is the hidden theme for this word search and how we're going to move forward. So bits, right, refers to binary. The number 10, I think, helps a little bit, although that's a stretch. But more importantly, so if I go over to my sheet, if I go over to my prep work, right, I've marked all of the words in the search, and then I've put them all here in order. These are the answers to the clues, and they are very similar to the word penny. So how the heck can we use binary on this to move forward? Well, we can actually, rather than care about what the letter is that is not the same as the word penny, we can simply mark whether it is in common with penny or not. And that ends up being our binary value, right? Is, for example, one letter of the word penne pasta is different from P-E-N-N-Y, right? That should be a Y. And 2 of the letters in ferny are different from the word penny, right? We have an F replacing a P and an R replacing an N. And now as you go, there's some other assumptions you have to make. One of which is the location is very important, right? So the Y in Kenya still has to be marked because it's not in the right location. So the only letters in Kenya that have in common with penny are the E and the N in places 2 and 3, right? The Y has to be in its correct location if we want to not, I should say, in this case, it's not color it red. But anyway, I've hidden a column where I've marked all of these, right? So here is I reset that, and that didn't work one bit. Here is the markup of all 10 words and how they differ from the word penny, right, which is sort of the theme to our puzzle here. And you have 2 options in converting these to binary, right? We can make the red letters ones, or we can make the black letters ones. And if you have some intuition about where we're going with this, right? We're looking for a hidden message, and in order to do that with binary code, we're going to take the binary, convert it into a number, or a more familiar number, I should say, decimal, and then convert it into its corresponding letter of the alphabet, and that has to be between 1 and 26, or otherwise, we won't be able to get a letter of the alphabet. So this first word on the list narrows it down for us, because if you make the black letters ones and the red 0, you get this number. You get 11110, which is greater than 26. I believe it's 30. 30? Is it 30? I think it's 30. But anyway, 30, right, is too high. So flip it all. The reds happen to be ones, and the blacks happen to be zeros. So if I expand another column, which I hid in advance, right, here is the binary for each word. I've simply turned all the red letters into ones and everything else into zeros. And if I use a simple formula here, which is I'm going to do bin to dec, which also is in Excel, even though I'm in Google, they have very similar formulas. We're going to use bin to decimal and get some numbers here on the right. They're all between 1 to 26. That looks great. And if you convert them into letters, let's see, I'll actually give myself a little more room. I'll do that. A, T, B, A, S, H, G, R, I, D. The secret message is Atbash grid. So that's not great, right? That means we have more work to do. So if you look up the Atbash Cipher, if you've never heard of it, the Atbash Cipher is simply sort of mirroring the alphabet. So any A turns into a Z. A B turns into a Y, a Z turns into an X, and so on. You essentially convert every letter of the alphabet into its corresponding letter coming in the reverse direction. So here's what I'll do. We are going to atbash this grid real quick. So I'm going to copy the grid down here. I'm going to empty it out. And I'm going to put a formula in. Actually, I'm going to make, in fact, I'll make my cipher here to make it crystal clear what I'm doing for anyone that hasn't heard of Atbash before. Probably could have had a shortcut to typing out these letters, but that's fine. What we're going to do now is write out our ciphers. So right as I said, A to Z, B to Y, we're just going to write the alphabet in reverse order. And I can also make that a little easier on myself, although I do know the alphabet backwards relatively well, by writing, right, I just went from the bottom to the top, A to Z. And now we've got a cipher. And so all I'm going to do is, I think they have VLOOKUP here, right? VLOOKUP is the easiest way I know how to do this. Perfect, VLOOKUP. We're going to search this. We're going to search the cell in the grid. In this little table I just made, we are going to get column 2, and I think that's exact match. Oh, that's different from Excel, but we'll just hit true and see what happens. So if I paste that formula, it's going to fail miserably. What just happened? Ah, right, wait a minute. We've got to, excuse me while I mark my table as static so it doesn't shift the location of that. There we are, okay. And also, I seem to have lost my formatting. There we go. Okay, we've got the formatting. So I have now atbashed this grid. I just did a little lookup of this table, but you can probably use a cipher online or just do it yourself manually and throw things in. So we've atbashed the grid. What now? And because there's a lot of garbage letters here, right? But you should have an instinct that, first of all, right, all of the letters in the colored areas that I marked as the words we found are, I should say, they've been locked in, right? They've been predetermined by the previous step of the puzzle. And so what we should be interested in, right? And if you've ever done like a word search in a newspaper and then they say like, oh, read the leftover letters for a secret message. Well, this is no different, right? Well, up here, the secret letters didn't spell anything at all, right? Those leftover letters were gibberish. But now, if I clear out all of the words we found, you'll see that there's a pretty clear message there in white. Maybe you spotted it before I told you. But it says, overlay this shape. It's very hard to read and I have caps lock on. It says, I'm having troubles. Overlay this shape on blue add. That's what that says. This reading left to right, top to bottom, we get this secret message. So we're not quite done yet. What does blue add mean? Well, check out the back page. Oh, got a coin still. Check out the back page of the brochure. We've got a blue ad here. Very suspicious. So what I'm going to do, I actually think I've already cut it out. Let me jump over to the word search one more time, right? So what I did is I think I cut out the word search. There we go, right? I just cut out, when it says this shape, you've got two options. It can be the words you found, or it can be the inverse of that, where these letters are. But you can try it both ways. What we're going to do is simply drag this shape over onto our blue ad. And it fits quite well. They seem to be the same dimensions. And as soon as you overlap them, you'll see, oh, look, we've got a new message on the blue ad. It says, again, left to right, top to bottom, 2 connect centers of red pennies. So thank goodness we've solved another mini puzzle, right? This is 2 connect centers of, I don't know, I'm very picky with my capitalization, red pennies. Ta-da! Thank goodness we have another one down. So I'm going to label this sheet 1. That is 1, find and cut 2 orange regions. 2, connect centers of 2 red pennies. So, right, we're getting more instructions as to what to do at the end of this, at the end of all of this. So, on to section 3. How am I doing on time? 35 minutes. Not bad, considering kind of how many steps are going on here. So, let's see. Where is my front page? Back to the guide. It says, we've published an op-ed from the old man about how things were better in his day, even if you might disagree. Maybe there's something meaningful behind his nonsense. That second part is going to be a little cryptic, but the important thing right now is op-ed. There's an op-ed right on the back. Right up top, it says the other side of the coin, and there's a guy rambling about how back in my day, but he does compliment the park. He says the park is pretty great. But I won't read all this right now. This one, gosh, I'm trying to remember 4 and 5, but this might have been, I said that the binary was a pretty tough step, but I think overall this mini puzzle is very difficult. This is the hardest pattern to notice, and so let's see. You get very little clues as to what's going on. So the nice thing is, again, I think it helps to go in order, because going in order lets you notice some things that are going to carry, like techniques from one mini puzzle that are going to carry over. So in this case, we did the cutout coin collection earlier, right? And we got this sense that things on one side of the brochure might have meaningful things on the other side of the brochure. And the op-ed being called the other side of the coin is a pretty good clue to look on the other side of the brochure. So off we go. If I flip the page, I get this little dog park, which wasn't really clued in the guide, but it's right here. So you can read this little caption. It says, leave your pets when you enter and they'll be waiting for you on the other side. So I think that's this is what you should look at to make the connection a little bit more certain, is you should see on the other side and say, okay, this is right, this is our second half of the puzzle. And it's exactly in the place of the op-ed. So what's going on there? Now the dogs and cats, and there's actually a dragon in there, but the dogs and cats, you might be initially, impressed to try and identify what types they are, like things like, okay, that's clearly a dachshund, and we've got some, like maybe a greyhound and things like that, and poodles, right, obvious, but then the cats are very, how do you identify a cat by a silhouette, and a lot of these other dogs are very generic, and so that's a little bit of a dead end that I encountered, kind of trying to ID them specifically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the technique I did for the coins earlier. I'm going to pull up a mirrored version. There we go. Yeah. So the text you see, this is what you would see if you held this brochure up to the light. And for the record, I did not actually solve the puzzle like I'm doing right now. I actually solved it by holding it up to the light. I had a printed out version, and that was what I did. So I did this, and I held it up to the light, and what you'll see, let's see if I can get this just right. I think that's pretty good. You should be able to see, right? So the whole point is I need you to see the silhouettes of the animals, but still be able to read the text. So that's going to be important. No cutting necessary. I think no cutting necessary. Dear God, I wouldn't want to cut this puzzle out in any way, or at least this section. I think you're meant to hold it up to the light in order to see the other side of the coin. So this is the tough part. This is definitely the evil portion of the third mini puzzle, which is you have to start reading it, and there are some weird, as always with these puzzles, there's some weird grammar and words that come up like sales gal. Like who says sales gal? And I don't know, some other things like are just very specific. And I think where I picked up on it was I read this phrase. I read, if you like sweets, you're in for a surprise, in for a pound. And I stopped and I went, this brochure is about pennies. I'm looking for a penny theme, right? And also I think that helps immensely. Is every single portion of this puzzle after the first one, you have to keep in mind it's going to be about pennies. So in this case, in for a penny, in for a pound is what I caught on to. It is a common phrase with the word penny in it. And I started looking for more of these. And there were some others like whatever. If you replace the word, actually no, I'm near it. Wait a minute. Why did I point that out? I was looking for penny for your thoughts, by the way. I'm looking for that because I know that's one of the phrases I know really well. Penny for your thoughts, and that's in here somewhere. Vying for your thoughts. It's actually tricky because they branch at the end of a sentence. So, um, also I want to bring up a picture of my cute dog again because her name is Penny Lane. So we are constantly making puns about pennies in our home. Find a penny, pick her up. All day long you'll have good luck and all of that good stuff. So so I was totally ready for memory lane. That's going to be penny lane, and you know right at the beginning had a pretty obvious one, which is roller coasters can cost a pretty neat sum. And I was like, wait, wasn't that the perfect opportunity to say cost a pretty penny? And we've got penny arcade. We have I think penny from heaven is one I hadn't heard of before. I've never said that out loud. Penny loafers, otherwise the clown, Pennywise the clown, right? So I started picking these out, and this was actually before I had figured out what to do with the animals on the back, but it suddenly occurred to me when I held it up to the light, the animals are suspiciously overlapping with a lot of these words that can be replaced with penny. So I'm actually, can I put a slash in? I can. So I'm gonna start making a document here of all of the penny phrases that I found. And what's going to assist me, what you have to notice is that again, they must have the important ones must have a animal overlapping them in some way. Cost a pretty penny. That's the first one. It's going to be cost a pretty and in fact, I'll take the word, right? It's a different word than penny, so I'll capitalize that. So neat gets replaced by penny, right? And actually, you know what? Better yet, I'll put the phrase, and then I'll put the word to the side here. I'll do that. So now we've got this and the word. The next one is going to be actually penny stock. I wasn't really familiar with that, but we have penny stock, so that becomes much. We have for my money nothing beats the penny arcade again. So regal. We have sight, smells, and food. If you like sweets, you're in for a surprise, in for a pound. In for a penny, in for a pound, and the word is surprise. I know, little typos there. We're going to have one more here, which is, again, like a penny from heaven. From heaven. Miracle is the trade-in word. Next paragraph, we're going to say, in the games in my day, were worth vying for your thoughts. Penny for your thoughts. But they're so cheap. Who knows what the amount saved is a sales gal earned. This right here is a really tricky one. It's the amount saved is a sales gal earned, right? Which I think there's usually, I'll just do amount or penny saved is a penny earned. In fact, I'll split that up. Is a penny earned. And the reason is we have two words. We have penny saved is amount and penny earned is sales gal earned. Next, the next one is, I will say I did not get this one while solving. I was able to back solve it because I knew kind of, based on constraints later, I'll mention the full process, but Miss Moneypenny, I would not have picked that out from Miss Moneylenders. That was a really evil one. That is the James Bond character. But man, that was a sneaky one I completely missed. But it was the only one I missed, so I was able to kind of see the answer and work backwards to figure out where it was. Hardly needed and it's also cheap. Of course, prices these days are so much more dreadful. That's penny dreadful. Whoops, penny dreadful, so that's more. Final paragraph, I said memory lane. Whatever you're interested in, the customer should get memory worth. Worth every penny, right, or at the beginning of that line. So worth every penny is replaced by family. Again, otherwise the clown is a really sneaky one. I liked that. The acrobats will astound some advice. Don't wear shoes that'll pinch. So that'll pinch can be, you can say penny pinch, or you have penny pinchers, right? So that'll, nice contraction there. And finally, Oxford loafers become penny loafers. I believe that's the full list. And so now, right, we've got a bunch of words, and immediately, again, we're not done yet, no pattern yet. But what's the deal with the animals? So the animals are actually doing more than just sitting there, kind of suspiciously becoming near a lot of these. They're actually pointing them out for us with their, if you guessed it, tails and heads, right? The other side of the coin, tails and heads. So there's more of our penny theme, right? So and not all of the tails and heads are used, right? We have other animals off to the side that I think that's why I got really caught up in, like, oh, well, what if, this cat has a tail and none of the words on his tail are being replaced by penny? Did I miss one? And they're just red herring animals. And I think it helps to notice these ones off on the side that are kind of extras. To let you know that not all of the animals are going to be used. Not even all of the heads and tails on the animals that are used will be relevant. So you really have to go from the phrases. You have to find the phrases first and then match them to the animals. And that's, I think, the hardest part of this, is kind of noticing that pattern outside of the animals. Because also the animals cover such a large area, right? Like, how do you know what's relevant inside those animals' silhouettes? So if I mark down, all we're going to do is write down head or tail, because head or tail are often cryptic clues for the first letter and the last letter of a word. And that's actually how we're going to get our extraction here. We're going to use, if we have an animal head, we take the first letter, and a tail, take the last letter. So like the first one, neat, right, is on this dog's tail. If my cursor, I think my cursor is not there. There it is, right? The word neat is on this dog's tail. So I'll write tail. We have penny stock again. We have much stock, right, is on this cat's tail. And I'll speed up from here on. But that's like a good example of how they're doing this. Whoops, I meant to say I'm just typing random things here. Regal is a head. Surprise is a tail. Miracle is a tail. Vying is a dragon head, of all things. The amount is a head. Sales gal is the dragon tail. Lenders is a head. What else? I should be looking at the list. More what? More dreadful is the poodle tail. Memory lane is a tail. Family head. Other is the kitten head. That'll is a dachshund tail, and Oxford is another tail. So to finish this off, if I take first and last letters appropriately, T, H, R is the first letter, not the last letter, right? So here's two more last letters, two first letters, a tail, a head, a tail, tail, head, head, tail, tail. 3, valley fold. That's the instruction. So that is the end. And so at least after solving 2 of them, I didn't solve them in this order, but after solving 2 of these, you get the idea that once you've reached an instruction with a number in front of it, you've hit the end of a mini puzzle, and you can kind of stop and work on something else. I was going to make a comment about the one I missed, which is Moneypenny. So fortunately for me, the Moneypenny ended up being an L in the extraction, so missing it, right, I still had the message 3 valley fold, and it was kind of easy, it read off easily, and I said, oh, like I'm just missing an L, which these are, keep in mind, I actually kept them in the order I found them in the paragraph. I didn't reorder them. There was no need to do that. So I also knew that the missing L was somewhere between amount and more, right? And so I knew it was kind of right in these 2 sentences here. And then I knew it was also had to be right on a head or a tail, And so I started looking at heads and tails, and this guy stuck out to me because I was like, oh well, for otherwise we were allowed to have half of a word being replaced. So maybe like here with lenders, we could replace lenders with penny in order to get that L we need. And even then, like it still took me a minute because I was like, what is like, is it penny are hardly needed? Or like I looked up Moneypenny, and finally Moneypenny was, I found that on the Google, but that was definitely the hardest one. All the other ones I think are pretty easy to, either you've heard them or they're easy to find on Google if you have that idea for just replacing a word. Not to mention the fact that again all of these animal heads and tails give you good hints as to where you can at least try replacing a word. Like they're not all used, but they give you a lot of clues. So that is the first three parts of this mini puzzle. I definitely was not going to do all of this in one video. But you can probably see why I'm very excited about this. I love this puzzle. I have the whole concept. I'm very impressed by the people who put it together. It's just colorful and fun, and there's so much going on. Um, my complaint, which I'll probably elaborate on later when I finished it, is definitely that it's almost a bit much for the first round. Like this is still the Grand Castle. Like this is the beginning of the hunt, right? And this is kind of a bit much. Now, unfortunately, like teamwork makes this blow by. Like this is not hard with a team, a bunch of people and your friends, like looking at this together. It's a lot more fun that way, right? It's solo though. It's kind of intimidating. So I don't quite know how valid my complaint is, but it does seem like it's a really big puzzle early on. Like and this is I'm saying this after the Ferris wheels, right? Like I mean all the other puzzles are going to be pretty intensive and a lot of effort, but this still is like each step is like its own, it's a whole thing, and as you'll see, step 5 is by far the most effort. This takes a lot of effort. And step 4 is just another downright tricky one. And so, and then what comes after that, this process that we're spelling out is also uh, has a pretty big twist to it. And so really, like I'm both impressed and intimidated at the same time. Like it's perfect for the audience, I think, but it's a little crowded. It's so much. And personally, I love that. And I think most of the people doing the MIT Mystery Hunt probably absolutely adore this kind of thing, where it's just, screaming patterns at you, and you get to I should say you get to resolve your initial confusion. I think that's the best part of solving any puzzle, right? Is going from this moment of cluelessness and where am I? What am I doing? How did I get here? To this beautiful solution that uses all of the things, right? We've done so much already, right? We've done everything about the word search and the dogs and the poem, and all of these things have been relevant so far, and a lot more of this brochure is going to be relevant naturally, but we'll get there. So, I want to try to crank out the second video over the weekend, and I've got a good backlog of puzzles now to kind of put out. I've done Scottish Display and the Trebuchet and the Meta, so I have a good number of puzzles, and I'm gonna try for a few more days to see if I can crack Snow Job. Man, that is an evil one. Come find me on Twitch sometime and help me with that thing. But otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, guys.